Hey folks, this is Professor Smith. I am happy to bring you this book written by a good brother, Pete Rambo Sr. This book explores the prophecies that are becoming manifest in our day and their origination in ancient times, as recounted in the scriptures. We hope you enjoy this study, and any comments you put down in our YouTube channel, you can do so. Our channel can be found by putting at HMI777 in the YouTube search field. Again, that is at HMI777. We hope you are edified by this series of studies. May the Almighty Yahweh bless you. Welcome back, folks. We are going to continue some more of this book, 10 Parts of the King. And we're just going to read through what we can and see what is in this book, and you can put some comments down there in the YouTube if you agree or don't agree or whatever else. We are here, we left off the last time here at where it says Israel's two houses. The two chief tribes of the nation of Israel are Judah and Joseph. As 1 Chronicles 5:1-2 explains, Judah received the blessing from Jacob to be the ruler of the entire family, while Joseph received the firstborn blessing and the family name Israel. The house of Joseph is often called Ephraim, after Joseph's son, who became father of the chief tribe of the house of Joseph. So why is it Judah and Joseph? Well, because the firstborn right was transferred to Joseph. Remember, Reuben had lost it. And then Joseph, Jacob rather, had put that blessing to it really through his son was the blessing transferred. Ephraim being the younger between him and Manasseh. So we see this diagram here. Here's the house of Joseph of Ephraim. We have Ephraim, Manasseh, Reuben, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Simeon, and now Simeon and Levi, there were remnants, but the majority filtered into the house of Judah. The majority, especially of Levi. So remember that Levi received no territorial allotment. The priestly tribe of Levi received no territorial allotment, but settled in cities given to them by each of the tribes. Most Levites attached themselves to the house of Judah when the kingdom was divided. Deuteronomy 18:1, Joshua 21:1-42, 2 Chronicles 11:1-17. Okay, so remember, because Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who took control of the northern kingdom, basically caused them to lose their jobs and their inheritance, because he set up a parallel counterfeit religion with golden calves at Dan and Bethel, and he had his own pagan priests and so on. So what was a Levite to do? I mean, they had no land inheritance, so the natural course of action would be, okay, well, we're going to go where we are accepted and where we are going to be given a job, where we are going to be taken care of. And so, of course, they filtered into the house of Judah from the territories, the northern kingdom territories. So even though Simeon's territorial allotment was entirely within the territory of Judah at the time of the kingdom's division, many Simeonites allied with the house of Ephraim. Okay, all right. So there was a few Simeonites, but the majority of them went into Ephraim. Okay, so that's what he's saying here. Okay, so now we have this house of Israel does not equal house of Judah, and this is. I have to tell you, this is the biggest problem the church has. It really is, because they lump all this together. They say that a Jew is a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. They say it's all Jews. And we're the church. We have taken over the blessings Of anything that says Israel or Jew, they make no distinction. So this is the point of this book, is to prove from Scripture that there is a very important distinction when we look at the prophecies. Okay, so number 3 here, the house of Israel does not equal the house of Judah. All Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jews. Christianity and Judaism share a common misperception. The assumption is that whenever the house of Israel or house of Judah appear in Scripture, the term referred to the same group of people. Growing up in a Christian home, I was reared in that paradigm, with the result that many passages of Scripture were perplexing and nearly indecipherable. But then Yahweh began to open my eyes to the fact that he had a purpose in drawing a distinction between these separate groups of people, revealing that he had a different role and task for each house. Okay, so before I go further, I should make something clear. When I refer to the house of Judah, I mean both the ancient kingdom of Judah that remained loyal to the Davidic dynasty and the Jewish people who are descended from them. Judah and the Jewish people are one and the same. All of them are Israelites. And that is where I agree with the commonly held view of Judaism and Christianity. Okay, so all Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jew. Okay, so that's now most of the Christianity agrees with that. All Jews are Israelites. They agree with that, no problem. But what they don't agree with is not all Israelites are Jews. See, they're blind to that still. Okay, and the rest of the world for that matter. My disagreement is with the commonly held view that the Jewish people are both the house of Judah and the house of Israel. And, I should mention here that even within the nation of Israel, there is a minority of Jewish rabbis that understand this distinction. And I mentioned before, I threw out the name Yar Davidi. When I refer to the house of Israel, house of Joseph, and house of Ephraim, I'm referring to the non-Jewish part of Yahweh's family who are also Israelites, either by birth or by being grafted in. So who are the grafted in ones? Everybody that's sitting in a church, unbeknownst to themselves, according to Scripture, according to Paul, according to everything within the Holy Writ. It tells them that they are grafted into what? The Commonwealth of Israel. They become Israelites. Now, they're not Jews, but they're Israelites. This is the paradigm-shifting thought. The world until now has assumed that the Jews are Israel and Israel is the Jews, that the division of the human race is between Jews and Gentiles. What the Scriptures explain, however, is that the real division is between Israelites/Hebrews and Gentiles. Okay, so by way of illustration, consider the example of the United States of America. To the rest of the world, all of us were born here who have been naturalized as citizens are Americans. That is correct. However, within this group of 330 million people who may be called Americans, only 28 million reside in the state of Texas. Although all Texans are Americans, it is not correct to say that all Americans are Texans. That's right, there's 50 states. The reason the world does not yet recognize non-Jewish Hebrews is because they have not existed as a people for nearly 2,700 years. Now, I quibbled with that a little bit, citing the 1st and 2nd century of the church who did have this correct understanding, but it was lost. Let's see, what was the other, I forget what the other one was, but continue. Generally, he's right here. For nearly 3 millennia, the Jewish people, the house of Judah, have been the only visible portion of the nation of Israel. It is understandable that the Scriptures referring to the two houses are a mystery to Christians because Christianity has no expectation that the lost tribes, quote unquote, of the house of Israel or Joseph of Ephraim will ever return. Jews do expect the lost tribes to return. Now, I might quibble with them here. The majority of Judaism thinks they've already returned. It's a minority that understands the prophecies correctly, that this return is going to be so much greater than anything that happened in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah. It's going to be massive. But they expect them to be or become Jewish. That's right. They try to put us, it would be like, this is why they don't like Messianics, because Messianics resist that. Because they know that Yeshua, or as churches say, Jesus Christ, he truly is the Messiah. So they resist that. Very few seem to expect that the two houses of Israel will manifest as two distinct entities prior to Messiah's coming to reunite them. So, basically, the Jews, they're going to come up with they're going to be hoodwinked by a false Messiah. And those who are Messianic or of a Hebrew Christian faith, they are the house of Israel. They know who the Messiah is. They accept him, but they're not accepted by Jews. See? So you have two houses and one kingdom. The record of Scripture is clear. Now let us turn to some of the passages that demonstrate the house of Israel and the house of Judah are not and cannot be the same. I have already cited the example of Hosea 1, 6 through 7. Then she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And Yahweh said to him, name her Lo Ruhamah, no mercy, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I would ever forgive them. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah and deliver them by Yahweh Elohim, and will not deliver them by bow, sword, battle, horse, or horseman. That's right. The Jewish nation has maintained its identity. Now, they went into exile, but during that exile, they had prophets, they had people that were continuing the faith, the Torah understanding, and Ezra and Nehemiah came back, and they reestablished the kingdom. And yes, the kingdom had been besieged by those who took control over them in various ways, namely the Greeks and then the Romans. But even after the horrible events in 70 AD, after they had rejected Yeshua Messiah, they never lost their cultural or religious identity. They were put into exile, and they were punished greatly for that, but they never lost their cultural or religious identity. You understand the difference? So this is how this was fulfilled. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah and deliver them. Okay, so basically deliver them from obliteration. Jews have been preserved all throughout the centuries, right? Clearly, the house of Israel and the house of Judah cannot be the same group of people. One receives compassion, the other does not. Hosea has multiple similarly distinctive verses, such as this one. This is Hosea 4:15. Though you, Israel, play the harlot, do not let Judah become guilty. Also, do not go to Gilgal or go up to Beth Aven and take the oath as Yahweh lives. Okay. So now, interestingly enough, Judah still sinned in many of the same ways. We know this by the book of Jeremiah. The house of Judah still sinned. They had all kinds of idolatry, but it wasn't because they were more righteous necessarily than Israel. I know a lot of Jews might get upset if I say that. They still had all kinds of idolatry, but why did Yahweh choose to preserve them? Well, for the sake of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for the sake of the fathers. That's why, essentially. Because of the righteousness of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and because of the promises he had given them. All right, and so this verse from Hosea 5, moreover, the pride of Israel testifies against him, and Israel and Ephraim stumble in their iniquity. Judah also has stumbled with them. Now he's talking about idolatry and so on, but one was preserved, that being Judah. Let's see. We have already seen the distinction between the house of Israel and the house of Judah in 1 Kings 12, 20 through 24, but it existed well before Rehoboam's time. The division is visible in 2 Samuel 2 during the years following the death of King Saul. Okay, so this is 2 Samuel 2, 8 through 11. And it says here, but Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, even over all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he was king for 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. The time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. So we see a division even here, even before the kingdom of Solomon, which was united under Solomon. Eventually, David, through the help of Yahweh Almighty, united these two nations together so that they would be one nation. It would be similar to let's say if the South had been successful in breaking away, but then over time had been coaxed back. Maybe there was a leader that was so charismatic and so righteous that even the South could be coaxed back. Now, of course, in American history, that didn't happen. The North, basically by force of arms, brought them back. But this is kind of what happened in the Bible here. Judah quite logically followed David because he was of the tribe of Judah. Some of them may have understood Jacob's prophecy that the scepter would not depart from Judah. That's important. Similarly, some in the rest of Israel may have understood the prophecy of fruitfulness and the firstborn blessing on Joseph and Ephraim. The tribe of Issachar seemed to have had a particular aptitude for such things. As the tide turned in David's favor and the tribes began to acknowledge his claim to the throne, Issachar was among the first to do so. Of the sons of Issachar, men who understood the times with knowledge of what Israel should do, their chiefs were 200, and all their kinsmen were at their command. Okay, so Issachar was the first to step forward and say, hey, we need to have a united kingdom here. We need to follow David. He's the righteous one. We may infer that understanding of the times meant realization that Judah through David was at last ready to take up the scepter, and that Joseph Ephraim would entrust him to administer the wealth and resources they contributed to the entire kingdom. So basically, they trusted David to do what was fair. Nevertheless, the competition between the two houses has never abated. The prophet Isaiah records a yet unfulfilled prophecy that is beginning to take shape in our days. He says, now this is in Isaiah 11. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Then it will happen on that day that Yahweh will again recover the second time with his hand the remnant of his people. And then he goes on to list all these places where they're at, his people. Now, I pose to you a question. What was the first time that he recovered his people? I submit to you that's an easy answer. He reached out his hand and he recovered his people from Egypt. That was the first Exodus. This is a second Exodus scripture that I guarantee you has not happened yet. And there's a minority of rabbis that agree with that assessment. It's Christianity that largely is completely blind to this. They do not understand this, but more and more Christians are beginning to understand it in our day. Now, Christianity, most of the churches for 70 years, it's kind of like you won the lottery, and you won the lottery as a kid, and now you're an old man after 70 years, and only now you're starting to dawn on the fact that you've got all this money in the bank, but that you never knew you had, or with the lottery commission. Now, that's a rough analogy, but this is the way the churches are. If they would understand this, they could understand not only end-time prophecy much better, but they could understand a much wider role that they have in the plan of Elohim. Okay, so this is going to happen a second time. It's a second Exodus. Hasn't happened yet. Then it will happen on that day that Yahweh will again recover the second time with his hand the remnant of his people who will remain from Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, from the islands of the sea. The islands of the sea could be Britain and the United States, maybe. And he will lift up a standard for the nations and assemble the banished ones of Israel, and will gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Then the jealousy of Ephraim will depart, and those who harass Judah will be cut off. Ephraim will not, let's see, where are we at? The jealousy of Ephraim will depart, and those who harass Judah will be cut off. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, and Judah will not harass Ephraim. So what is this? What are we saying here? The remnant that comes out of the fallen church are the house of Israel, and during the tribulation, this will happen. This will happen. They will the anti-Messiah is going to be dead set against the Jews, and he's going to be dead set against the remnant. And who are the remnant? Revelation tells us those who keep the testimony of Yeshua and the commands of Elohim. See, if you keep the commands of Elohim as you should, at very minimum, 10 commandments, that means you've recovered the Sabbath. That means you've recovered the name. That means you've gotten rid of Christmas and Easter. There's no idolatry. The churches today, they like to say they keep the 10 commandments, but honestly, they're only keeping 6 out of the 10. as they were originally intended. They've tweaked them and made them try to fit their doctrine rather than their doctrine conforming to the word of Elohim. So this is going to happen. The Jews and those who are the remnant who come out of the fallen churches are going to join together. Now, does that mean that those of us who come out of the churches are going to deny Yeshua? Absolutely not, flat out. The Jews are going to have to compromise their stubbornness for the sake of self-preservation. And they're going to join with us and say, okay, well, you can keep your Jesus, your Yeshua. Let's just join together for self-preservation. That's what's going to happen, according to prophecy. They will swoop down on the slopes of the Philistines on the west. Together they will plunder the sons of the east. They will possess Edom and Moab, and the sons of Ammon will be subject to them. This has not happened yet. This passage is in the early stages of fulfillment even now. Judah is being gathered to the land. Some might claim that the mention of Ephraim is parallelism, that Ephraim is only another way to refer to the Jewish people. That, however, is a wholly unsatisfactory solution, not only because Judah and Ephraim are distinct parts of Israel, but because there has been no visible fulfillment of Ephraim's return. He's right. If we were to poll 10,000 Israelis as to whether they are of Judah or Ephraim, how many would claim anything other than Judah? We suggest that the number would be very few indeed. Yes, he's right. Yet in the two-stick prophecy of Ezekiel 37, Yahweh declares that this is the unification of two peoples, two kingdoms. He promises, this is in Ezekiel 37:22, and I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king for all of them, and they will no longer be two nations and no longer be divided into two kingdoms. Okay. So this most likely will happen during the tribulation. If we look in the world today, we see the house of Judah established as the modern state of Israel, but who is the other? Where are they? Jeremiah further draws distinction between the two houses in multiple places. Chapter 3 is incredibly direct, as we have seen. Okay, so this is in Jeremiah 3:6-10. Let's take a look at this. Then Yahweh said to me in the days of Josiah the king, have you seen what faithless Israel did? She went up on every high hill and under every green tree, and she was a harlot there. I thought, after she has done all these things, she will return to me. But she did not return. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it. And I saw that for all the adulteries of faithless Israel, I had sent her away and given her a writ of divorce. When did that happen? When the Assyrians carried away the northern kingdom. Yahweh allowed them to be completely taken over and put into slavery, and they no longer were allowed to be a nation. But after that happened, you would think that Judah would have perked up and said, oh, we better be careful. The judgment hammer's coming down. But no, yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, for she went and was a harlot also. That tells us that the Jews, the house of Judah, was very much into idolatry just the same. Because of the lightness of her harlotry, she polluted the land and committed adultery with stones and trees. Yet, in spite of all this, her treacherous sister Judah did not return to me with all her heart, only partially, but rather in deception, declares Yahweh. Now, this is a problem with Judah, and it's a problem with the Jews. They are steeped in self-deception. They're steeped in it. And it's a very difficult stronghold to break. Only the Master Yeshua can break that stronghold in the life of a Jew. Ezekiel echoes this distinction in chapter 23 as he tells of his two sisters, Oholah and Holabah, specifically connecting them with the capital cities of the two kingdoms. Their names were Oholah the elder and Oholah their sister, and they became mine, and they bore sons and daughters. And as for their names, Samaria is Oholah, and Jerusalem is Oholabah. That's Ezekiel 23:4. In Ezekiel 4, the prophet articulates differing judgments for their varying degrees of sin. Okay, let's see where this is. This is in Ezekiel 4, 1-6. Let's take a look at that. Now, you son of man, get yourself a brick, place it before you, and inscribe a city on it, Jerusalem. Then lay siege against it, build a siege wall, ramp up a ramp, pitch camps, and place battering rams against it all around. Then get yourself an iron plate and set it up as an iron wall between you and the city, and set your face toward it so that it is under siege, and besiege it. So this was basically a pantomime. that Yahweh was telling the prophet to do. And it was symbolic of what was going to happen to them. This is a sign to the house of Israel. As for you, lie down on your left side and lay the iniquity of the house of Israel on it. You shall bear their iniquity for the number of days that you lie on it, for I have assigned you a number of days corresponding to the years of their iniquity. 390 days, thus you shall bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. When you have completed these, you shall lie down a second time, but on your right side, and bear the iniquity of the house of Judah. I have assigned it to you for 40 days, a day for each year. Okay, so that was quite a task Yahweh gave Ezekiel to do, wasn't it? As we return to Jeremiah 3, we see two more verses demonstrating the impossibility that the two are the same or some form of parallel mention. Jeremiah 3:18 says, and Yahweh said to me, faithless Israel has proved herself more righteous than treacherous Judah. That's Jeremiah 3:11, emphasis added. In those days, the house of Judah will walk with the house of Israel, and they will come together from the land of the north to the land that I gave your fathers as an inheritance. Jeremiah 3:18. Okay, so these verses, like so many others, simply cannot be speaking of the same body of people because of the persistence of the house of Israel equals house of Judah mindset, both in Judaism and in Christianity. This point cannot be overstated. Scripture states repeatedly that they are two groups of people with differing destinies. That's right, who are brought back together at the end of days. Absolutely right. And this goes all the way back. It was paralleled when Leah was sent ahead with her children, and Rachel then, you see how even the family of Jacob was split for a while. Everything in Scripture has a prophetic aspect to it. That's what we need to understand. All right, besides the passages that draw a distinction between the houses, there are verses that can only reasonably be applied to one house or the other, but not both. Several examples are, okay, so this is in Deuteronomy 28:64. Moreover, Yahweh will scatter you among all peoples from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. There you shall serve other gods, wood and stone, which you or your fathers have not known. Okay, so that's a curse found in Deuteronomy 26:64. Given to both houses at that time as one group of people, because they were at Mount Sinai when this was given to them. But he said, look, if you don't keep these things, I'm going to cut you off and scatter you, or at least put you into exile. Even I am he who comforts you. Now this is in Isaiah 51:12-13. Who are you that are afraid of man who dies, and of the Son of Man who is made like grass, that you have forgotten Yahweh your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth, that you fear continually all day long because of the fury of the oppressor, as he makes ready to destroy? But where is the fury of the oppressor? This is Isaiah 51:12-13. Okay. Now here's another one, Jeremiah 3:20-22. Surely as a woman treacherously departs from her lover, so you have dealt treacherously with me, O house of Israel. That's right. They set up golden calves at Dan and Bethel, and they were the worst idolaters. Remember that Ahab and Jezebel came out of the house of Israel, declares Yahweh. A voice is heard on the bare heights, the weeping and supplications of the sons of Israel, because they have perverted their way. They have forgotten Yahweh, their Elohim. Return, O faithless sons, and I will heal your faithlessness. Behold, we come to you, for you are Yahweh, our Elohim. Okay, so that actually may be a prophetic utterance, because in our day, we're seeing the sons of Israel return back. I'm one of those that has returned, and there are many, many other like me out there. Have the Jewish people served other gods, wood and stone, for the most part? No, at least not since the end of the Babylonian captivity. Right, I think he's probably right about that, but before that, they certainly were. They certainly were. But after, they were keeping themselves pretty on the straight and narrow in most ways. They were trying to avoid idolatry. Who can argue that the Jewish people since that time have forgotten their covenant with Elohim, or that they worship idols of wood and stone? Certainly they have not acted perfectly, but the hallmark of their reputation is that in the face of terrible persecution, They have clung at times desperately to the covenant and Torah with the expectation of Yahweh being true to his everlasting word. So what is he talking about here? He's talking about the Hasmonean period, the Maccabees. Now, you can read about the horrors that the Jewish people faced by reading 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Maccabees, okay? And this was during the Seleucid Empire, which developed along with 3 other branches of Alexander the Great's empire. When Alexander the Great went as far as India, he died of an illness, and his kingdom was split up into 4. The kingdom that was over the territory of which the Jews were was the Seleucid emperor, and one most notable, really a bad guy, he was like as bad as Hitler or worse. This was Antiochus Epiphanes, and he did his level best to try to get the Jews to stop keeping Sabbath, stop keeping the food laws, stop keeping the feast days, stop reading Torah. He did his level best, and he killed a bunch of them and tortured a whole bunch more. And so, but they didn't give it up. They didn't give it up, you see. So the Jewish people, at least since I think he's right here, and it can be aptly proven, that since the Babylonian captivity and they had returned back, they did their level best to stay true to the Torah. The house of Israel, Joseph Ephraim, however, has had a chronic issue of service to other gods or to Yahweh, as represented by images of wood and stone, a practice he does not appreciate. It is the house of Israel, that would be Gentiles, and those who may have the genetic blood of you remember the house of Israel was divorced and sent away into Syria, and they were spread all throughout various places of the world at that time. And why were they finally cut off? Because they just were completely corrupt and idolaters. Okay, so it is the house of Israel who was assimilated into hundreds of peoples and cultures, and who subsequently forgot their Elohim and abandoned the Torah. Verses such as these demonstrate particular fulfillment of prophecy for one house or the other, as we recognize Yahweh's purpose in dividing the houses and guiding them into their respective destinies. Passages like these become increasingly clear and literal in their fulfillment. That's right. Without belaboring the point, it is sufficient to say that Scripture contains enough passages articulating a distinction between the 2 houses that we cannot assume each reference is just another poetic name for the Jewish people. In other words, the people in the churches are still, whether it's Ephraim, whether it's house of Israel, whether it's Jacob or whatever it is, they all say, that's the Jews, that's Jew. It's all Jew. But they are ignorant of the fact that there is a distinction, and it is a powerful distinction, because there are separate prophecies and separate end-time fulfillments. Yes, eventually these 2 groups will come together, and they will become the entire commonwealth of the remnant that is left during the Great Tribulation. But for all throughout history, ever since Solomon's death, there's been 2 nations. Okay, this is the important part to get out of this. And Christians who are in the church are representative of the house of Israel. That's what you need to get from this. If you're a church man looking at this video, you, according to prophecy, are put into the category of the house of Israel, or Ephraim, or the stick of Joseph in Ezekiel 37. And Jews are Jews. Jews are Jews, okay? Because there's some crazy people out there that say that Jews aren't really Jews. They're totally off the beam, like Matthew Nolan. I don't like to name names, but he's really off the beam on that. All right, so every use of the related name for the 2 houses must be carefully weighed by the surrounding context to determine which part of the nation is subject in each case. In other words, the prophecies and everything else subject to them. When one does so, yet more specific differences between the 2 houses begin to manifest. Scripture becomes into sharper focus as we begin to understand Yahweh's plan and purpose for his 2 witnesses on the earth. Okay, so I think what we're going to do here is let's take a look and see what we've got here. Let's just take a look at this. These are tribal allotments after the conquest of Canaan. And you can look at this picture here. So you can see here's Manasseh here. It's kind of hard to see this picture, but These are all, I mean, look at this land right here. Now that this is much more expanded and larger than it is today, isn't it? Today, it's just a small little piece of real estate that the Jews are inhabiting over there in the Middle East. But this is the way it was in ancient times. Look at this. Look at this huge piece that Manasseh has. And then it's kind of hard to, let me see if I can get it bigger. I don't know if I can get it bigger or not. Nope, it won't let me get it bigger. So essentially, get down. There we go. Okay, so this is the Bible Atlas, a manual of biblical geography and history, especially prepared for use of teachers and students of the Bible. And this is for Sunday school. Basically, it is a guide to show people, an idea of where these tribes would have been after they had gone into Canaan land, and they slowly they had conquered the whole place. And this was under the tutelage and the administration of Joshua, who was the successor of Moses. And so here's where they probably would have, and there's plenty of historical record for where they would be. So this is accurate. All right, so guys, that is that chapter. And let me set a, all right, we'll do chapter 4 the next time. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'm going to keep going through this and just, this is a great book. It's a great book, and there's much you can learn from this book. I hope that you are, looking up the references for yourself and seeing if what is shared is true. Ask the Father to help you. All right, so with all of that, I will say shalom, shalom, everyone.